Hello. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to continue talking about our country, Zimbabwe, and our constitution, which is a very important topic in these days and times that we're living in. We have lived through some of the hardest times in Zimbabwe, beginning with the colonial forces arriving, taking over our different kingdoms that we had, renaming the territory which they established as Zimbabwe, subjecting our forebears to a segregated existence, removing them from their ancestral lands, making them work to pay the burden of taxes, arresting them for seeking freedom on their land, and to get back the land which was usurped by these colonial forces. Now, all this was painful, hurtful. It really threw our forebears way back on their trajectory of progress. They were thrust all the way to the beginning, although some colonialists and their sympathizers might argue that when they showed up on our shores, on the land, on our mountains, rivers, plains, they say we weren't anything to write home about. We had nothing, no progress. And then I sit back and I wonder, why then were you so interested in settling amongst people who were pathetic and who seemed like they had no future? And then I begin to think, the gears of my mind moving. You can see them, can you? Well, I can hear them. I think and then realize, it suddenly hits me, suddenly dawns on me that, well, we had what they wanted. Beautiful land, rivers flowing with clean, refreshing water, mountains, wildlife, fresh air. We had it all. I hear even Cecil Rhodes came over to our continent because the atmosphere, the environment of wherever he came from made him sick. And when he came down to us, he was healed. So the air has healing qualities on our continent, not just in our country. Now, the subjugation and the mistreatment and the usurpation that the colonialists wrought upon our forebears was unpleasant. Our forebears, they complained. Nothing was done about their complaints. Their language began to be changed. The religions that they had practiced for centuries, for eons, were stripped away. Medicine, and they were told that all your practices that you had were demonic. Now, for some reason or the other, these actually began to be the prevailing circumstance. People began to yield to the colonialists' view, warped as it was, of the world and life. They chipped away at the confidence of our ancestors. They somehow managed to put them in a vice grip and They became the colonialists, a ruling class. They imposed laws, taxes, tariffs, you name it. They controlled the lives of our ancestors. The kingships and the kingdoms were broken apart, and our kings were made vassals to the colonial system. And they then were just reduced to servants, serving or watching over the subjects of this colonial system. And they were subjects as well. This culminated in disgruntlements, growing disdain, and people just became unsettled and anxious, agitating for freedom as we knew it before. We were very few free people. So sometime in the mid-60s, war broke out, and the rest is history. And we have our country back today, functioning fully well. But there was a lot of lives that were lost, homes, families broken apart. Some people left, never came back. Some people's educational careers were cut in the middle, or they were cut short. Some people's lives were cut short. Homes were lost, wealth, properties. Everybody chipped in any capacity they could. The braver ones, those inspired, did go out to fight, to join the liberation struggle. And Lancaster House happened. We know the story. Almost everybody knows that story, where the negotiations for independence took place, and Zimbabwe in 1980, in the month of April, we began to live in the same territory that today we know as Zimbabwe. Now, a lot of people know about the liberation songs that were sang during the war. We know political parties, slogans and chants that were formed when Zimbabwe came around. We know our religious texts, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, whatever religion that you have or practice, you know there are texts that you refer to for guidance and light. Now, I'm saying this to say that now when our independence was ushered forth or arrived, we had to do something to ensure that that independence was meaningful and true and real. And one of those ways, one of those realizations of independence was the land redistribution program, where, like I said, people that had owned land for a very long time, our forebears, they were stripped of that land and moved to places that had no fertility, that were not conducive for human occupation. Those were places that they had actively avoided in the past, and then the colonizers kept the pristine land for themselves. Now, when we took our land back, there were also some discrepancies in the way that that land was distributed. A lot of people say that it was not fairly distributed. Some say it was fairly distributed. There are so many benefits, but as you know, where human beings are, we are bound to have disagreements. But I want to talk about something that's very important that we must now stand on. It should be like a solid ground that we stand on, a rock that we use, a reference guide, equivalent to any religious text that you have, that you may, for the religion that you may be practicing or aspiring to practice or formally practiced. It is the Constitution. Brilliant minds came up together, cobbled together, went around asking people, this is the document that we're going to use. This is going to be our Constitution. Now let us all agree with the contents of this Constitution, and the Constitution was passed. Now, that Constitution, for me, the way I see it, is a guarantor for the freedom that we got that came through the Liberation War. That Constitution is what we all are supposed to stand on today to maintain true and actual freedom. For if we do not do that, certain characters amongst us will use arbitrary laws that they come up with because they the ones in positions of power at a particular moment, and then they just say what I say goes without referring to the Constitution. There is always going to be problems. There's a danger that we actually might run into, wherewith people would come, swindle and hoodwink others and tell them, if ever you run into any problems, come to me. That person can be an elected candidate. They could be any individual who is a civil servant. They could be anything. They convince you, I am the one that will protect your rights. And if somebody can actually give you rights, they will take those rights away. But the Constitution guarantees that you get inalienable rights. Well, are they inalienable rights? Well, the Constitution guarantees you have rights such as the right to life, you have your freedom of expression, you have your right to privacy, a right to education, you have the freedom of assembly and association with peers. Now, if somebody comes to you and say, you're not supposed to assemble and associate with your peers or people that you have something in common with, or they are in power and their power is in jeopardy when people demand accountability, then they come and say, no, this is an infraction. You are disturbing peace. You are violating law and order. And then I am going to request for your arrest. I'm going to have you arrested. That is not right. But if you know you have your Constitution, your pocket Constitution, your app Constitution on the phone, or you look it up, what does the Constitution say about this? Oh, the Constitution says you're lying. You're not supposed to stop me from associating with my peers. You're not supposed to not give me health care because you are overseeing the health ministry. You have to ensure that you deliver the political good, which is health care. You are infringing on my rights and you are wrong. It doesn't matter who that person is. It could be a parent. It could be a neighbor. It could be a teacher. It could be a policeman. It could be a member of parliament. It could be a cabinet minister. For we all are bound by the same document, which is our nation's Constitution. There is a saying that if you don't know the rules of a game, then you're not a player. You're not the player. You are the ball that's being played. Some will say, even if you don't know the dinner table rules, you are not a participant in that at that dinner table. You are the food. So knowing our Constitution is as important as knowing our ABCs and our counting the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 up to infinity. It's very important. Just as we need light to drive at night, just as we need to read the scripture to be a good Christian, just as we need to read the Torah to be a good Jewish person, just as we need to read the Quran just to be a good Muslim. or any religion that you might be practicing, you need to be guided by the principles of that religion. And our principles as a nation are our constitution. For if we do not, like I said, those who have power will try to maintain and keep that power by keeping everybody else in ignorance, ignorant of what the actual law says or what the constitution, what their rights are. They might abuse that power, descend heavily on the people whom they are ruling over or ruling. And while they're doing so, they take liberties and break the law because they know the rules, and they also know that you do not know the rules. And I think sometimes if I were in power, and I'm enjoying that power and I'm loving it, I would perhaps even sabotage people's ability to actually know their constitution. So the constitution is not just a document for lawyers. It's not a document for politicians. It's a document for all of us to know. It is for a grandma at the market. It is a grandpa who is in his field, tilling his fields. It is that young man who is herding his parents' herd of cattle. It is the lady that's working in an office building somewhere in the city center. It is a bus driver ferrying people to and from wherever they're going. It is for everybody. It is for that mine worker working in an investor's mine. The Constitution is supposed to be known, because when you have knowledge of the Constitution, you have protections. Nobody is going to come and try to abuse you. Nobody is going to try and come and take away what's yours, your property. So the Constitution is for everybody. It's for us to use when we want to, say, seek accountability for our elected officials. Say we need information about certain things. We need justice. Somebody's coming and claiming that our property is theirs. It could be land, it could be buildings, it could be money in a bank account, it could be anything. So without knowledge of what rights are we guaranteed by our Constitution, we will not know how to protect ourselves and to protect those whom we love and to protect our leaders as well. Because some people might abuse those elected into public office so that they can get what they want at the expense of everybody else. They want preferential treatment. So we can use the Constitution to protect our police, to protect soldiers, and they also have to protect us. It's a mutual thing, benefit. It's a two-way street. We use it to protect them, and they protect us because that's what they are mandated by the Constitution to do. Without knowledge, we descend into anarchy. Without knowledge, really, it's very difficult to be. For people will take advantage of us willy-nilly, any which way they want. They will jerk us around, and we won't even know that they're actually doing something that's not right. So in this series, I have decided to look into our Constitution and see what it says about everything. What is it about? What is the document all about? What is it saying? And join me on this journey as we learn and help each other to understand what our fundamental rights, what this document is all about, and how we can use it in our everyday lives as we use the knowledge that we've acquired about Tsika Magariro, Ubuntu, Amasigo. It's a manual that we have to adopt and try to remember, quote, every time if we have to, and teach each other what this document is all about. Because when we know with knowledge, it's very difficult for people to actually abuse you, abuse us. Just as we know the songs, the chants for a political party, the hymns at church, the verses in our scriptures, just as we know the rules to the games that we play, football, rugby, cricket, tennis, soro, pada, any sport, anything, pastime, hobby, sport, whatever, everything has rules and regulations. We also must be well versed with what is expected of us, but not only just us, but also those that are put in charge of our resources, of our country, of our affairs. How do we keep accountability going? And the Constitution is what will guarantee that we actually have true and real freedom, and that we can keep that freedom alive and well. So I'm here, let's do this, and looking forward to going on this journey with you. And meet me next time in the next episode where we dive right into the Constitution. Until then, take care of each other, love your country. Thank you.